I swear to God, if this bitch makes more money than Chucky, you're all dead to me. So Annabelle Comes Home tells the story of Ed and Lorraine Warren bringing home the possessed doll of Annabelle to their little room of goodies of possessed shit, and while they leave for the weekend, the doll goes haywire on their daughter and the two babysitters. Well, we've got another Conjuring Universe film, everybody. What an interesting concept that this little supernatural film directed by James Wan that was a pretty big success spanned an entire cinematic universe in horror. I think this is the seventh movie now? Probably, 7th or 6th. We got the 2 Conjuring films. We now have 3 Annabelle films. We got The Nun, and I guess that La Llorona film was like an unofficial movie that's in this universe. So yeah, that's 7 films. That's a lot. So a little bit of a pretext to my thoughts on this universe so far. Haven't seen La Llorona, so that one I can't even talk about, but really enjoyed the 2 Conjuring films. Those are definitely the best of this franchise, and a lot of these movies are like James Wan directed movies that somebody else did, so when James Wan is the one doing the directing, they're always going to be a little bit better. I actually really like Annabelle Creation. That was one of my favorite movies a couple years ago when that came out. Was really impressed with that as a prequel. I think that the first Annabelle is certainly not good, but it's not nearly as bad as everybody makes it out to be. And The Nun was probably one of the most dull and lifeless horror films that I've seen in the past couple of years. Was not a big fan of that one at all. So my excitement level for this one was not very high because it kind of feels like been there, done that with Annabelle. I was worried that they were going to go the same route with The Nun because the guy that wrote The Nun wrote and directed this one, and it might have been his directorial debut. So it had me worried that it was going to go for the same approach of The Nun. But nonetheless, it looked small scale. It has Ed and Lorraine Warren in it. It looked a little bit more haunted house type instead of being this big, grand, epic gothic tale that The Nun was going for and kind of fell on its face with. So I walked in with modest expectations. Did I like this film? No, I didn't. Here's the deal, guys. This appeals to what I will call the most base level horror expectations you could possibly have. These were a string of films that came out a lot in the 2000s and kind of died out for a while now that horror has been making a big comeback with movies like Hereditary and A Quiet Place, and these more like even the Jordan Peele films, more like thinking man's films that are a little bit more ambitious with its story and its tone and trying to really get inside your head versus just throwing something at the screen and having a big noise. Blah! And that's what this film is. It goes back to that. Let's just wrap every single scene around a jump scare, form a basic plot around it, and release it in theaters for a small budget and make 20 times our return with no effort whatsoever. And I fucking hate that. So let's go ahead and get to the positives and get those out of the way. All the acting in this movie, pretty good. There's not really any bad performances in this. You've got Patrick Wilson, you've got Vera Farmiga. They are great in these roles of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I really liked what they did in the first 2 Conjuring films. I look forward to the Conjuring 3 even still. And they're not a huge piece of this film. They kind of just bookend the story, but the bits that they're in are very good. Even their daughter and the 2 babysitters, they're all 3 pretty good, especially the daughter. They look like they are very capable actors. They could go on to do many good things, even stay in this franchise if they do a 4th Annabelle film, and they'll be just fine as far as the acting. So, good acting in a horror film, that's a nice box to check.
Nice doll.
That's what you think.
And I do like the kind of small scale, confined, haunted house aspect that this movie goes for. Basically, 85% of this movie takes place in the Warrens' house. Just a couple of rooms and the backyard and the front yard. So everything is very contained and everything feels like this old classic kind of haunted house story. It's not going for anything epic or grand or large scale. It's very confined, very tight-knit, and the pacing of the movie goes along pretty good along with that setting approach. And my third and final positive is that the special effects are actually pretty damn good in this movie. There's even a werewolf in this that I would have swore was CGI, but I actually looked into it and it was mostly practical, and it looks really good. Like, I know they were talking about at one point werewolves being in The Conjuring 3. I don't know if they're still going with that, but if this was like a commercial for what they can do, by all means, we need a good werewolf film. Now moving on to the negatives, and I'll start small and move my way to the big stuff. So first things first, yes, it's a horror film, so a lot of times they have to kind of stick to bullshit to make the script work. If you're a capable script writer, you can get around that, but nonetheless, it's no thing that we're not used to seeing in horror films, characters making extremely stupid decisions. There is a lot of really dumb teenager shit in this movie. Some people say that's realistic. I disagree. I think there's a lot of things going on in this that no teenager in their right mind, even with the grief-stricken character of one of the babysitters, there's things that they do that they would never do. They would never walk down that hall by themselves. They would never go into that room by themselves. It's just, there were so many moments like that where I'm like, okay, this would never happen, but whatever, we'll see what the plot requires. There's also some pretty weak attempts at humor in this film. I've seen some people that actually like this character and some of the jokes surrounding him, so maybe it was just me because the movie had already lost me, so everything was starting to frustrate me. There's a character in this that shows up just so everybody can make fun of his name and the fact that it goes along with balls. Like, I don't even remember the dude's name. It's like Brad or something. They're like, hey, Brad's got balls. And every character that sees him says this. There's like this little story that he tells of why people call him that that's not funny or amusing at all. Even when Patrick Wilson says it at the end, hey, Brad's got balls. What do you know? I was like, that didn't stick the first time. You've said it like 8 times. Can we move on? I also found this movie to be very obviously and very desperately trying to get other spin-offs started because of this film. There's at least like 3 or 4 other monsters or creatures or entities that they are introducing in this in their own little sequence that you know for a fact the studio execs put them in there so that they could see the audience reaction and go, ha! See? Put $3 million into that. Make that movie now. We already got The Nun. We got Annabelle. They've been talking about a Crooked Man movie for God knows how long, and we're probably still getting. And now this movie introduces like the bride, which is this haunted bride's dress. They got the ferryman that leaves all these bodies with the coins on their eyes. You've got a werewolf that I already talked about. There's a TV at one point that was actually kind of a cool sequence that I don't know if you could frame a movie around that. There's some Chinese armor that you've seen in other Conjuring films that has a little sequence. So it just really felt like they were throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks.
What's that? The ferryman. They put coins all over the eyes of the dead so he could take their souls.
Not to say that some of these spin-offs might not end up being good. God knows, like I said, I really liked Annabelle Creation. It feels like this is a studio-produced horror film that is just out there to make more films and to make quick bucks. Yes, all movies are made for the sake of making money, but some movies have something to say. Other movies just say, give me your money, bitch. And this movie feels like the latter. And speaking of having nothing to say, this movie has no story. It has no plot. It has no direction whatsoever for what these characters are doing. It's literally putting Annabelle in a locked up house with a bunch of other haunted shit and letting jump scare after jump scare after jump scare after jump scare for 90 minutes happen until it just wraps up and it's like, okay, well, you guys already know what's gonna happen because this takes place before some of the other movies, so let's move on to Conjuring 3, shall we? I'm not exaggerating. I really think the person that wrote this movie and ironically wrote The Nun sat down and framed bullet point little paragraph ideas for a jump scare until he had about a page of them and then just wove dialogue and certain scenes in between to make all these jump scares happen. And it's so obvious throughout the film. Like, as soon as the second or third jump scare hits, you're like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. All right, 5 seconds, something's gonna jump out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah, yep, told you. It's the same old shit. You get the music swells down, they're walking around, or the fucking camera pans and then starts to pan back. And we're not idiots as horror fans. Like, you see people actually like covering their ears and stuff in the theater because they know it's coming. That is not scaring you. Jump scares startle you. There is a difference between being genuinely creeped out, unnerved, chilled to your bone, and just having a loud noise jolt you for half of a second. That is not talent. I have done jump scares in at least 3 intros to my videos, and I'm here to tell you it takes no more than 5 minutes of editing tricks to make that shit happen. And don't get me wrong, jump scares can be good. There's movies that utilize them well, and there's a difference between effective jump scares and fake out jump scares. Even some of the classic 80s films that we all hold up on a pedestal utilized jump scares, but they weren't the crux of the movie, and they weren't the only trick that the director pulled out of the fucking bag. In this movie, it was just like jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, to the point where it's annoying. I cannot stand that type of horror. If you're somebody that likes that, you just like being jolted for 90 minutes and you like turning and laughing at the person next to you that it actually got you with a loud noise, then by all means, you will enjoy this, and I'm not shitting on your version of horror, what you like whatsoever. But for me personally, and anybody else that is listening to what I'm saying and nodding their head, this movie is one of the worst as far as just jump scare after jump scare after jump scare, and that's all they have to give you. And I wouldn't be so hard on this film, honestly, if I didn't already know for a fact that this is gonna make money hand over fist. And it just drives me nuts that you see genuinely good efforts from writers and directors to make great horror films that bomb at the box office or just barely make a profit or don't really make a splash at the box office. And then you see lazy shit like this where a 20-year-old right out of college with absolutely no experience in the horror genre whatsoever could throw together in 15 minutes. It's frustrating that it's going to make the amount of money that it makes. Like The Nun. Have you seen the box office for The Nun? What the fuck? So in the end, guys, wasn't a big fan of this movie. I'm probably being a lot more animated than the movie will actually make most people feel. You might just walk out thinking, it was okay. And genuinely, yeah, I walked out and said it was okay. It's just the way that it sits with me, and when I realize that this type of horror is making a comeback because they're making so much money, and the fact that they're actually kind of degrading the Conjuring name from great films like The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 to movies like this with just no effort and no inspiration behind it whatsoever, it's very frustrating for me, so I get passionate. I'm sorry. So like I said, if you like these types of jump scare laden movies that are just going to jolt you throughout the entire time, if you really enjoyed the other Conjuring films, including the first Annabelle and The Nun, then this might be for you. If you're somebody that gets frustrated by all the things that I was just talking about, you might just want to save your money because this is just the same old bag of tricks with a new coat of paint on it.
You need to give her a soul, dear. She wants a soul.
So Annabelle came home, but the bitch might as well go back on vacation because this did absolutely nothing for me and nothing for the horror genre in my opinion. If you like these films, give it a shot, but save your money and wait for a streaming service. For everybody else that lines up with me as far as their feelings and their passions towards jump scares and lazy films like this, just go ahead and skip it. So what did you guys think of Annabelle Comes Home? Were you a fan of this? I actually have close friends that said this was their favorite of the 3 films. I don't know if they just disliked the other 2, but where does this land in the Conjuring films for you? I'm not gonna do a ranking just because I haven't seen La Llorona. I have no way of watching it because it's out of theaters and I'm not gonna pirate it, so unfortunately I didn't know that was a Conjuring film or I would have checked it out. So no ranking for me, but this would be probably right above the first Annabelle, maybe right above The Nun, because I think the small haunted house aspect was better than the laziness of The Nun. I enjoyed the small scale versus the big scale a little bit more, I guess. So third from the bottom, somewhere like that. So anyway, please like and share this video, guys. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. Check down in the video description below for social media links like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt, and Teespring. Definitely check out Teespring. That's the one that I just started. Just scroll the video down a little bit. You will see all those designs there. I got a brand new Chucky design released in conjunction with the new film. So check all that out, guys. Pretty good prices down there. It's a good way to support the channel and also just have some cool shit on your backs because there's some really nice designs down there. Some really neat stuff designed by Woody Bowen, so please check that out. Also check out my Patreon page. It's a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. So check all that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, including past Conjuring Universe reviews like The Nun, come to think of it, that might be my only review in this universe. I need to catch up on these, don't I? Anyway, check all that out, guys. If you want to check out those videos, click right over here.